Hello and welcome to another segment of Our Ventura. And today we're going to be speaking about debt settlement with Doug Daniloff. Hello, Doug.
Hello, George. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So you're the CEO of Effective Financial Solutions.
That's right.
Good. So let's get right into debt settlement.
Okay.
Let's start with the most basic question. What is debt?
Well, there's two types of debts, right? You've got what's called secure debt. Now, secure debt means that you owe something that's backed by some item, like a house, right? So you have a mortgage, you have a house, that's secure debt. You have a car, you owe the car money for the car, that's a debt, it's secure debt. Then you've got unsecured debt. And unsecured debt is basically credit cards, lines of credit, like a signature loan of sorts, that's not backed by anything. Medical bills, clothing store bills, those kinds of things are unsecured debt.
Okay, and then in terms of how this impacts consumers, is one better than the other, or it's kind of an irrelevant point?
Yeah, it's kind of irrelevant when you've got this much money and you owe that much. It becomes irrelevant whether it's secure or unsecure in your mind.
Okay.
However, if you're trying to resolve your debt, the debt you can resolve more effectively is the unsecured debt. So there's room for negotiating with your creditors. Whereas with secure debt, if you don't pay that, they simply take back their item, whether it's a house or a car, and there's really no room for negotiation. You could refinance it, right? Maybe instead of paying $400 a month for a car, maybe you'll bring it down to $300 or something like that. So that is possible. But as far as the actual getting rid of the debt itself on a secured item, that's not going to be done unless you just pay it off.
Okay. All right, so at what point does debt become a problem? I mean, obviously it's a problem as soon as a person conceives that they don't have enough money, but there's a legal point that starts to press in at some point.
Okay. Well, the legal point is this: if you are not able to pay your debt, and I'm talking about unsecured debt, the problem is that depending on your creditor, they could sue you. Right now, honestly, in my business, less than 2% of the creditors actually sue. But it could happen.
Okay.
Right? Now, when would they sue? They've done it as early as 3 months of delinquency, where you're not paying your debt, or up to maybe 6 months, or sometimes even longer than that. Most will defer that lawsuit, if they're going to do that, until maybe 6 months or more. Okay, so in other words, you don't pay your debt for 6 months or more, that's when they could sue you.
Okay.
All right? But again, it's not something that is done a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's look at the different avenues for handling debt. I mean, at some point, a person is either going to be too stressed out and they just got to handle it because they don't want the stress, or at some point, the legal issues are going to force them to contemplate how to change their life. So what are the avenues to handle too much debt?
Well, before I get there, I want to talk about this legal point really quickly, because it's something that creditors use as a pressure point to get somebody to pay.
Okay.
And it becomes sort of a haunting shadow for the individual, meaning they think it's going to happen, right? Because they heard that somebody got sued. So the tendency is for the creditors is to make it look like it happens all the time. And in one case, in one lady that was in Louisiana, she was afraid her kids were going to be taken, which is never going to happen.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So the legal point is actually, in reality, not that big of a thing.
Okay.
But it is used a lot.
All right.
Okay.
Way overstated.
Way overstated.
Okay.
So let's look at the different types of getting out of debt. The first one I want to go over is the guy that's got enough money left over at the end of the month after he pays his bills, and he wants to accelerate his way out of debt.
Okay.
All right? That guy usually, traditionally, I've seen, takes a little bit of money and applies it to each one of their debts. So the average number of credit cards somebody has is 6. So let's say they have $200 left over at the end of the month. They're taking a little bit, $50 for this one, $50 for that one, and so forth. That's not the way to do it. Okay? What you want to do if you're in that condition is you want to pay all the minimums, take the balance that you have, let's say it's $200, and put it all towards one of your credit creditors. It really doesn't matter which one. You can choose the high interest, you can choose the low balance, it doesn't matter. The point is that you're going to get rid of that particular debt straight away. Then you're going to take the minimum payment from that one, plus the extra, and roll it into the next targeted debt. All right? Get rid of that, and then you're going to roll it all into the next targeted debt. And that way, it's called the roll down method. And that way you're getting rid of and you're accelerating getting out of debt. Okay, it's a good way to go. The other ones, if you have pain with debt, is you make your minimum payments, right? Now we all know, because the credit cards guys have to do it, it's 20, 30 years before you can get out of debt, paying your minimum payments. But that's one way. The other one is that you can go into bankruptcy. I'm not a bankruptcy attorney, so you have to find that out for yourself whether that's applicable to you, but it might not be, all right? There's another one called the debt consolidation. And consolidate is to take parts of something and make them one. So on a debt consolidation loan or a debt consolidation method, which is the nonprofit places, you're basically giving them one check that covers their fee plus them taking it and splitting it in to a portion to all of your creditors.
Okay.
It's called debt consolidation. It's nonprofit. The beauty of that operation is that it was actually conceived by the banks and credit card companies in the late 1950s as a way to help consumers pay back their debt that they owe the credit card companies. Now the interesting thing is the credit card companies give back money to those nonprofit and they get a tax write-off.
So when you say the beauty seems to be for the banks.
Well, it's a beautiful thing for the banks and credit card companies.
Okay.
Absolutely is. Okay, so but there's that method,
Yeah.
all right, and it's good for somebody that has a low amount of debt, maybe $8,000 to $12,000 or $15,000 of debt. That vehicle is a good way to go. Okay, then there's debt settlement, and debt settlement is a little more radical. It's a little bit out there on the skinny branches of living, right? And the reason why is because you're actually changing the format of the game that you're playing. The game being you make minimum payments or you make more than minimum payments, but you're in the structure of the creditors. The debt settlement, you say, you know what, I can't play that game like that. I can't do my minimum payments and make it work. So let's say the creditors collectively want $700 a month out of you. What you can afford is $600. What you don't want to do is give a creditor a portion of their payment. That makes them grumpy. It's actually better not to give them money than a portion of your money.
That's counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's really kind of an interesting thing. So with debt settlement, the option that you're electing to do, that our clients do, is that they don't pay their creditors anymore, but they take that $600 a month, assuming that's what it is, and they set it aside. Okay?
Wow.
Now it gets a little dangerous here because the creditors can jump up and down and they get all excited and everything else and they want their money now, and it's all understandable, right?
Yeah.
But the real reason is because you're changing the game. Your intention is to pay them off, but you're changing it, right? So by doing this approach, they actually come to the table and they say, okay, you owe $10,000. I see that you can't pay $10,000. Let's compromise and come up with a new bill of sorts, right? That's what we do. We negotiate and settle that debt, okay?
Wow.
So now you settle it for, let's say, $4,000 as an example. Well, you've accumulated over a period of time money enough that would be about $4,000 that you can pay them off.
And is
Get
that,
it?
Yeah, I totally got it. And also, is the $4,000 just covering the principal? Or is this actually still covering principal plus interest, or is it actually less than the principal?
That's a great question, right? And none of it has any relevance to any of it, which is
Okay.
wonderful. If you owe $10,000, whether it's principal or interest or whatever it is, if that's your bill, your new bill is going to be $4,000. You see what I mean? Now, it just doesn't matter anymore whether it's interest or principal or whatever. You're going to pay that $4,000. How do you get the money to pay for it? By setting the money aside every month until you've got it, you see?
Yeah.
And then here it is. A person could do it themselves. My caution is this, a couple things. One, you can go to a court of law and represent yourself. You can do that, right? Maybe you'll be effective, maybe not. But there's the emotional factor that enters into the scene, right? So as a person says, I would like to have this to a creditor, they can make you feel and intimidate you so that you don't feel like, wow, I'm really going to get what I want here. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's good to use a company that can help you negotiate. Okay? The other thing is that you want to make sure, if you're doing it yourself, which is fine, you want to make sure you get a letter from the creditor stating that there's a new bill and that this bill is agreed upon by them before you make your payment.
Mm-hmm.
They do it 100% of the time with us. They don't do it 100% of the time with the consumer for whatever reason. They'll say, you know what, we'll send that letter to you as soon as you make the payment.
Wow.
Wink, wink. Okay? And it has been wink, wink sometimes because you make the payment and you say, that's what we agreed to, and all of a sudden that particular Fred guy doesn't work there anymore and there's no evidence of any transaction or any agreement in the computer.
Wow.
You see what I mean? And all of a sudden you're stuck with, wow.
Starting over.
Exactly. You see. So those are just some points of advice on the whole thing. That's pretty much how we do it now. You know, as far as your ways of getting out of debt, the 5 different ways.
Okay, good. Now we're starting to wind down here, and I can see we could gain a heck of a lot more information, but a couple of points. Number one, what would be the main protection that consumers have in this whole game of debt and credit?
Yeah, there are laws. There's a major law, the Fair Debt Collection Act, right? And it is your backbone. It stipulates what's okay for creditors to do and what's not okay. They can't call your neighbors to find out where you are. They can't call your neighbors and say, hey, he's got debt and he's not paying me. You know what I mean? They can't do it with family members. All right? There's certain hours that they can call, and if they call back, you know, past those hours, you can actually sue them.
Wow.
Yeah, for every violation, you could sue them for $2,000. So it's something that an individual should know. It's laid out online, Fair Debt Collection Act. It's laid out online so that you can understand it. So guys like you and I don't have to go into the legalese. We can just sit and read it and get it.
Good. All right, and if someone wanted to find out more information from you, what would be a good way to get in touch with you?
They can go to my website, effectivefinancial.com. And we've got, you know, there's a lot of articles in there, a lot of information and so forth. And there's an online form you can fill out and get some advice. Good.
Any closing thoughts for our viewers?
Well, I think that given the fact there are just a few ways to get out of debt, I think if an individual's in over their head, which a lot of people are, they should really investigate each part for themselves to see how it applies to their financial situation. And I think that's the best advice that I can give people.
Well said. All right, thank you, Doug.
You bet.
This is George Alger signing off for this edition of Our Ventura TV. Until we see you again.